you all come at the future of work and the modern workplace from a different perspective. So let me maybe just start out asking you broadly, and maybe Claire, you can start. What's the biggest change you're seeing in how people work today?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of discussion about kind of impact of technology. Even the Chancellor just now talked about the fourth industrial revolution. But I think some of the themes overall is more than 50% of people now work flexibly. So there's no longer a kind of fixed abode of places to work. By the way, the mixture of the workplace now is pretty much dominated by millennials. So the way they want to work, the way they want to collaborate is super different. And then there's just small technology disruptions going on at the same time. So all of the advent of AI and what that's going to do to change the shape of work, change the types of work, is putting a lot of tension in the system. But it's also putting, I think for all the leaders in the room, it's putting a ton of opportunity if you harness it and capitalize it with both what you do and then how you involve your people and skills in order to build momentum and give confidence to people of how to move forward.
Cal, what's changing that you're seeing among Slack customers?
I think the biggest change across all kinds of organizations is the environment in which they're operating is changing faster than ever. So markets are moving faster than ever. Technology is accelerating that rate of change. And so there's a greater need for organizations to gain a high level of agility to be able to respond to that change. And a lot of that agility is gained through better and quicker and faster organizational alignment. And I think there's three kind of trends that are driving the ability for organizations to quickly align. The first is the rise of messaging in the workplace. I mean, we saw a big rise of that in the consumer space over the last 10 years. That's really starting to penetrate the kind of enterprise world. The second is really proliferation of software. There's so much more software used in the workplace today than there was even 5 years ago. The average kind of mid-size enterprise is now using 1,000 different bits of software, which is an insane number. But the third kind of macro trend is a drive for more transparency in the workplace. And some of this is driven by a desire for more productivity. When you understand what your coworkers and what your adjacent teams are working on, you can be more productive. But a lot of it is driven by, as you said, the changing workforce and their relationship to work. So as more than half of knowledge workers are millennials, they bring a different expectation of how they relate to their work and how they relate to their company and how they relate to their team. And there's a desire for greater transparency. And we see that across all kinds of organizations, from the small to the very large and across all kinds of sectors.
So Chris, Claire and Cal are coming at this from the perspective of the digital tools that people are using. You think, all day about the physical environments that people work in. How do you think about building offices for the modern worker today versus when Workspace started 20 years, 30 years ago? So
we have 3,000 customers and 4 million square feet just in London. And a building doesn't work unless you can work in that building. And our customers, there are two core trends. One is technology and one is collaboration. And we have 200 staff, but we have 3 technology teams. One that drives the technology for us as an organization, how we're automating processes, how we transacting online or enabling our customers to transact online. One that's providing the technology for our customers. We provide all the digital technology in our buildings for our customers. We do this with a partner. We've got a significant equity stake in that partner. If they can't get what they want now, or if something goes wrong, fix now, why do they want to stay in our buildings? And thirdly, we have to control the infrastructure that's going across our buildings to enable those two practices to happen. But the collaboration is a really significant point for us, because in the past you would have an office. An office has a reception desk, corridors, and offices running off it. We don't have any offices now. We have business centers where you will walk into an open space, a cafe, a co-working center, where people can meet. And the phrase I really like is a market of members. And that's really what we're hosting, markets of members across London. That phrase was used in a book to describe London's first ever co-working center in 1686. Lloyd's of London. And it's a good way of thinking about how people want to work, certainly small businesses who want this flexibility. So getting that collaboration and technology to work together is what we spend a lot of our time thinking about.
I wonder if the pendulum will ever swing back to offices, whether we will just get tired of these big open spaces with no walls and no privacy.
Well, do you know what? People want both.
Yeah.
So they want to come into our buildings and they love the collaboration and the ability to meet others and trade with others. They're all businesses, but they also want to be able to work and they also want to be able to get stuff done. And some of them do that through their own offices. Others do it in co-working, and the really interesting cultural thing for us is watching noise-cancelling headsets. I mean, that's what people are using in co-working. That's the signal, don't talk to me, I'm busy. Put them around your neck, I'd love to collaborate. So people want both.
Well, Cal and Claire, there's a great irony in the fact that there are now fewer walls and fewer barriers between us and our colleagues, and yet this has been this great renaissance in digital communication tools. Like Slack has taken off, despite the fact that most of the people I communicate with, or talk to via Skype, are behind me. So why have they not been mutually exclusive? Why do messaging tools, thrive in this environment?
I think there's a couple of factors there. One is that as we see organizations become more and more distributed, there's a need for that. So that's where people work remotely, but also as more organizations become international and it's people collaborating across different offices, it's the same effect. There's such value in people having face-to-face communication, the nonverbal cues and the work that you can do in person. How can you recreate that for distributed organizations? And I think obviously the tooling is huge there. But there's also been this shift in the kind of nature of work. As more and more kind of tasks has been automated, increasingly, knowledge work is human differentiated work, the places where humans are great and machines are terrible. So that's, creative, collaborative work. And as more and more of this work becomes teamwork, there's much greater need for kind of persistent collaboration.
Claire, do our kind of geographic environments matter as much anymore? Like the environments, is it still important to centralize people all in one place?
I mean, I think the reality is, I think it's the point that's been made actually that says people want to work in all sorts of different ways. So you've got distributed workforce, you've got people that like to work alone in silence or with headphones on, you've got people that like to be at the hub of stuff where they create creative ideas. We're actually in a redesign of some of our office space for Microsoft, and it's interesting the point you made about the headphones, because we're actually designing in lots of collaborative space, a lot less fixed desks, and then this notion of libraries that are scattered around. So for people that need space and want to be quiet, then they've got like a little library that they can go into. That's just an interesting
People feel very passionate about these open environments. I mean, I've seen some studies where people say, they're counterproductive, that they would rather move into more private environments.
Yeah, but I think ultimately, you've got to, in a changing workforce, a mixed workforce with a lot of technology for collaboration and the importance of creativity and ideas, you've got to figure out how you use technology, innovation, and space to create the culture for kind of innovation and impact in your organization. And it's about the mixture of all of those together that makes the big difference. It's not like tech on its own, it's not space on its own, it's about the overall environment that you create and doing something that will work as well for the millennials as well as your more experienced workers.
So I queued up a poll, and hopefully we can see it on the screen. It was along the lines of asking whether messaging tools, the new generation of messaging tools, if people believe they've made them more or less productive. Okay, have workplace messaging tools made you more productive? So a real referendum here, Cal and Claire. I'm curious to see how people vote on this. It's funny. I mean, I now can't imagine collaborating with my global technology team of journalists without these tools. So yeah, pretty positive response there. Cal, what is the proper way to use these tools without creating unnecessary distraction?
I think that since the smartphone has come into the workplace, especially kind of over the last 5 years, it's become increasingly easy to always be in a state of semi-working, where you're never fully disconnected from work. And I think that's not healthy for long-term sustainability in the workplace. And so we definitely want to encourage people to be able to delineate between when they're working and when they're not. And so we provide features like do not disturb mode or fine-grained notification preferences to allow you to say, like, I'm not working right now, I'm not available. But I think anytime when we see a new technology, a new kind of mode of communication come into the workplace, it is disruptive. And it takes some time to map kind of the cultural norms of your organization onto how you want to communicate. And the same thing happened 30, 40 years ago with the adoption of email, where people said, oh, I'm suddenly receiving far too many memos. I don't want to have this many memos. People can contact me all the time. And now that seems crazy now, as we figured out how email should be used in the workplace. So as these tools evolve, it takes a little bit of time to understand the best way to map them to the working culture that we want to have. But I think a lot of that is providing tools for people to be able to disconnect from work when they're not working.
Claire, how do you guys think about kind of coding to prevent or minimize distraction?
I mean, I think it's a big challenge, I think, for, you know, as tools have proliferated. I mean, it's great to see the audience, 68% says it's easier to collaborate with team members. But I think the point that Cal's made about this always being on is definitely something to think about. When we try and coach or teach our customers and teach internally, this sort of principle of how you use the different collaboration tools. So, you know, obviously there's people that you want to collaborate with in your external network, and, you know, we use things like LinkedIn for that, you know, like Twitter, etc. But I think then it's also about, you know, the collaboration tools that you will use internally, what the place for email is, what does leader comms look like. So I think part of maybe the reason people either think it's frivolous and distracting is possibly too strong a word, but if you look at...
Hey, I wrote that.
No, thank you. Like polarized answers to the questions. But I think part of it is sometimes it can seem confusing, and what am I using stuff for what? And I think this principle of how are you finding the right time for focused work, and how are you streamlining the way that you communicate and collaborate? Where do you find quiet space to get that really important concentration work done? As well as, I mean, without stating the obvious, downtime where you're not distracted by work at all and you can actually spend some quality time with family and friends, etc. I think is an important topic. It was certainly at the Leader Forum I was at earlier on this week for London Tech Week. It was actually one of the panels that was there that was talking about techniques for people to actually switch off. And I think that will be a theme that all of us have to wrestle with in terms of how we're getting balance.
It's getting harder and harder to do that.
Yeah, very much
Chris,
so.
are your customers asking for different things now in terms of like kind of communal team space? Has that changed over the years?
Yeah, it's changing continuously. So 8 or 9 years ago, you either want a unit or you might want some co-working space. You might want a meeting room every now and then. Now you want the same thing at once. You want a suite of everything. And the challenge for us is we've got those physical spaces. How do we provide the platforms and the technology to enable someone with a card to go online and book whatever they want for whenever they want it? And that's the way the market's moving. It's not just having occupancy flexibility. It's also the space itself. How flexible is the space itself? So we're talking about, it's our customer's space, it's not our space. We own the buildings, but it's their space. So the ability to move furniture around, the ability to have their space decorated however they want it, it's really important to them because it's their working environment. And so they're constantly evolving their demands. And the challenge for us is to continue to challenge ourselves. Do we really understand what they want? And are we investing in the right areas to keep providing them with the right technology and the right physical environment and getting that blend right? Because the two, although the two are so iterative, understanding how that's changing is a real challenge for us.
Chris, I described Workspace as the WeWork before WeWork, and I just can't resist asking you because we've seen them raise an enormous amount of capital, expand all around the world, very leveraged business model. I know you guys do things a little bit differently. You can punt on this if you want, but like, do you have questions about the WeWork model?
No, I mean, I'm a big fan of WeWork.
Even though they're a competitor,
they've come into an established market, and why are you asking about WeWork? Why aren't you asking about any of the other operators in London? I mean, they've really stamped their brand on this market. And forgive me for being a bit glib, but if WeWork succeed, it validates our marketplace. And if they fail, it validates our business model. We own our buildings. WeWork don't own their buildings. And so, there is a difference operationally, but I think what they've done is a superb job in creating a profile for the flexible market. And no problems at all with what they're doing. You know, they're very different.
Very civil answer there. So, Claire, you guys did a study last year, and I think you polled 1,000 executives and 4,000 rank and file employees, and really identifying this kind of future time bomb in the way we work. They basically said, I think it was something like 40% of industries could be displaced by AI.
Yeah.
Right? And I wonder how you think, that coming technological revolution will impact how we work.
Yeah, so the study, as you outlined, I mean, it was 41% of business leaders felt that their business model would be significantly disrupted.
That's right. Thank you.
In the next 5 years. And the interesting additional stat to that is that less than 50% of leaders, those same leaders, were doing anything about it. So I think part of the reason for the study was, A, to get a sense of the landscape, what was going on, but also try and provide guidance on, if you know that there's disruption coming, you know that your business model is changing, and you know that there is technology advancements in order to help you do it, then how do you move forward with it? And so the research study was practical guidance to do that. But I think the customers that are doing it well, and it's early days for this technology for many organizations, but for the customers that are doing it well, they do perform 5% better, so 5% bottom line profitability better. And then typically what they're doing, it was interesting looking at the Bloomberg researcher earlier on talking about what were the main use cases that were going to get used for AI. Many of those are where customers are starting, but they're trialing things. They're picking like a pilot. They're not sure whether it's going to be successful or not, but they're just going for it. They're trialing, they're failing, they're learning. And then the other two things that they're doing very well is they're not just doing it as a top-down project. They are involving their employees and getting them to kind of vote on how is that going to impact the workplace and get them involved. And then the third thing they're doing is they are really, really heavily focused on skilling. I think it's a top issue that has come out this week. I think the Chancellor just referenced it as a top-of-mind business issue for skills. And the companies that are performing the best are the ones that are really thinking about future planning and future investing of those skills and how the roles are going to change as they implement some of these technologies.
Cal, where do you see Slack, helping customers make this transition?
I think if you look back at the kind of the last 10 years of technology change in the workplace, there's been this huge focus on individual productivity, on making people much more efficient, faster, more accurate, higher quality in the individual work that they do. And that's across all kinds of segments. If you think about like a recruiter a decade ago, recruiting, like candidate sourcing was a job where you could go into the lobby of a building, look through the directory and cold call 100 people. Yeah. And LinkedIn changed that completely. And that has been the same for most roles across all industries. And it's all about that individual productivity. I think what we haven't seen is the same kind of application of technology to teamwork, to making teams of people more efficient together. And I think, if you think about the best team that you've worked on, the ability of a team to work together is multiplicative, not additive. So I think the kind of biggest unrealized upside for any organization is its workforce and how they can get them working together better. And while it's kind of always impossible to say how technology is going to change over the next decade, maybe we're all going to be wearing VR headsets on the blockchain, shouting at our computers, or maybe none of that will work out. But definitely we're seeing more and more work becoming team-based. And so I think to the extent that we can help people work together better, that's going to be beneficial to all kinds of industries.
Yeah, and so I think some of the AI analytics actually is around, providing insight to people of who they are working most with. I don't know if any in the audience people use that, but like who have you collaborated most with this week? And then it also has some interesting features around how many hours you're working with each person, and then some tips for downtime as well.
How close are we to seeing intelligent digital assistants in the workplace vis-a-vis Alexa and Siri in the home?
I mean, I'm definitely skeptical of like voice-based computer control in the workplace at scale. Who knows? Maybe I'm completely wrong. But I think we are already starting to see the effects of kind of AI machine learning on collaboration and information finding in the workplace. Because people you don't necessarily realize it, but you spend a huge amount of time trying to find information that already exists within your organization, like information routing. And it's not like differentiated human work. It's not something that humans are uniquely good at, but it's something that we spend a lot of time doing. And often within an organization, that's like really boring rote stuff, like how do I book time off? or how do I file my expenses, or what is the status of this project? And we spend a lot of time asking people so that we can find out the right person to ask a question to answer a question that's been answered 100 times before. So to the extent which technology can assist us in that routing and answering of simple questions, not necessarily the more complex, like uniquely human work, but I think that that can be very helpful in freeing up other time to do more valuable creative work, if that makes sense.
There are a lot of great audience questions for all three of you, so I want to select from some of them. This one's for Cal. When will Slack break through professional services like law firms, banks, and accounting? We still heavily rely on, no offense, Outlook and emails, which is such an archaic method.
Yeah, email has been around for a very long time and is going to be difficult to, displace eventually. But we do have a lot of customers in all of those segments, from the very large, like here in the UK, HSBC, or the newer in the financial segment, like banks like Monzo. And also in professional services, we have a lot of customers as well. But we're really just kind of at the beginning of the journey with Slack. So I think there's a lot more room for adoption, and it's really a new category. And so, educating the marketplace on a new category and what the benefits and applications of it are is a kind of a long-term project for us. And I think that as we can demonstrate how this way of working applies to different roles and different industries and what the use cases are, then I think we're going to continue to see that accelerate.
By the way, I've always meant to ask you, so you've now started 2 companies with Stuart Butterfield, Flickr, and now Slack. In both cases, you guys started by developing a video game and turned it into something quite different. We can't talk about it, but we're on the eve of a momentous time for Slack. What's the secret in how you guys have started with one thing and pivoted to another?
I mean, on the one hand, we're very bad at making video games, and I think that's part of the secret. But I think definitely with the line that's kind of run through all of those is that we came to build Slack as thinking about it in a consumer product mindset. So how can we build something which people find so useful and actually love to use that they tell other people about it? And that's not something you do with your expense reporting software. You don't say to your friend at the end of the day, I just had such a great experience reporting my expenses. You're not going to believe this enterprise software. But we came at it from a consumer point of view. And when you think about how consumer technology has changed over the last decade, or the last 2 decades maybe, the experience level has just gone up and up and up. It used to be that enterprise technology was kind of on the cutting edge, and that has flipped around to really be consumer technology, especially with the rise of the smartphone. And people just have such high expectations in the consumer side and in their personal lives that bringing that into the workplace has really, and that mindset has really enabled us to gain traction pretty quickly.
Okay, I got a question for Claire and a question for Chris. Claire, there's a couple of questions here expressing concern for contractors, temporary workers, gig workers, in terms of skill development. Can you talk to the challenges you have with skills in relation to the development you provide to these workers?
Yeah, so I think a couple of statistics, because you read some things and it's like, oh my God, all these jobs are going to change. But the stark reality is by 2020, the predictions are that there'll be about 800,000 jobs that are unfilled. And then you add that to the combination of not enough people coming through GCSE with STEM subjects. That's down 10,000 year on year. And this year, the number of females going through STEM subjects at school is the rate that it was in 2010. So just a little scary statistics to put around there. So we all know it's not just I'd say this is an industry issue, it's a UK issue. And so some of the things that we've done, and I think this is beholden on all the technology companies to help here as well as government, but I referenced yesterday actually at a keynote I was doing around the stuff that we've done with the AI business schools. So that's both for leaders, so for all the people in the room that are interested in kind of getting your head around what does AI mean, how do you think about ethical frameworks, how would you think about skilling for your staff. It's a really great set of free resources that are available. But then we've also complemented that with the AI Academy, which again is a free online resource for anybody that wants to learn basic skills and think about how to get themselves reskilled. So, and like Microsoft does that, I know a lot of the other tech companies are doing that. So I think for people that are thinking, is the work I do at risk of getting replaced in any kind of way? I think if you work for a company, I would be asking your company what you're doing for kind of reskilling to make sure that you're being equipped with that. And if you're an independent or a gig worker, there is a ton of online free resources that are available to kind of get yourself skilled up. And there will be a ton of opportunity in different shapes of jobs as they evolve. Not, one might be extreme compared to where they are, but some of them are nuanced changes that actually by focusing on kind of more collaborative skills, I think to Cal's point, more creative skills, those are the types of human skills that will be really available. And we are a big believer that says it's kind of human combined with technology. We think that will exist for a long time to come. It's not going to be, that AI is going to take over the world and humans won't have anything to do anymore. There is a real combination of the two elements together. So it's probably just thinking about the skills that you have that are quite human skills that could be complemented by technology.
Do you think government needs to play a role in reskilling workers so that we don't exacerbate some of the inequality we already see getting worse?
Yeah, and I think, Theresa May on Monday at the start of London Tech Week announced a competitive think tank, which Microsoft will be part of and many of the other technology companies in conjunction with government to think about kind of the competitiveness of the UK and how can we equip workers with the right skills. And obviously the skills agenda is going to be right at the core of that. So they should and they are. So.
Okay, Christopher, do you think virtual global teams are a threat or a benefit to shared flexible office space? Is that a tailwind or a headwind?
Flexible global teams. So that just means you can locate wherever you like, I take it. And in a sense, if people want flexibility, then those who are offering flexibility are going to attract those customers. So, I think technology is just changing the way we use space. But I mean, picking up on the point about technology, I mean, technology has been around since the Industrial Revolution. It's always been a threat to a particular type of job. But any historian of technology will tell you it's always created more jobs than it's destroyed. And we're just seeing a new phase now, and the fact that we have, your businesses wouldn't have existed pre-certain technology introductions, so it's creating a lot as well. And I think this sort of disruptive concern about AI and disruption is really about how do we shape up for the future. There are always winners and losers, it's very sad, but are the next generation and this generation being shaped up to have the relevant skill base for the future? Technology will create more jobs than it destroys. I mean, it always has, and it does. So it shouldn't be a concern. It should be something to sort of wrap your arms around and benefit from. And then, and a good example for us is, the way we're using AI. We wouldn't have been looking at AI 5 years ago, but now, we get thousands of inquiries every year, thousands of viewings in our buildings every year. How can we use AI to try to understand which ones are going to be more likely to result in a deal, and which ones are more likely to result in a deal quickly? And we're doing some really interesting work now where we're pulling in lots of different types of information, we're applying it to the data we're generating, and we're harnessing that data in a way we've never done before. And then we'll be able to present to our inquiries and our potential customers different options according to how we feel the likelihood of that inquiry resulting in a deal for us. I mean, a real estate business using AI in that way wouldn't have happened a few years ago, but it will generate opportunities as much as it will perhaps challenge some existing roles.
These audience questions are so great. I want to stick with these. So Cal and Claire, it's a tricky one. The rate of human social evolution is slower than tech evolution. I think we can agree. Do you think remote working and social alienation via distributed teams, only connecting using Slack and Teams-like tools, is making us more singular and defeating community bonding?
Ooh. You can start there.
Strongly worded. Yeah. I think that definitely the technology that's enabling people to work together over those distances is enabling people to form relationships that they wouldn't have been able to without it. So I think that to the face-to-face communication and in-person meeting is so important and powerful for collaborative work, and I don't think that's ever going to go away. Or we'll continue to mediate more and more communication and collaboration through technology, but face-to-face collaboration is so important. whether the kind of macro trend of people working distributed is a negative there, I think the trend has been away from people working in the same building in individual offices where they don't see each other face to face. So I don't think that's necessarily a huge factor. But to the extent in which technology can enable those same kind of interactions that you have in person, move more and more of those to be mediated by technology, I think that's a positive.
I think so. I mean, I think at the end of the day, people value flexibility. You know, that's the desire that they have. So I think the opportunity for you to have kind of global connections through the use of technology, and if you think of the advent of some of the tools that we've been talking about, you know, you're able to have video real-time connection, you're able to do kind of whiteboard collaboration, you're able to do file sharing, you know, and that sort of technology just wouldn't have been possible, 10 years ago. And so the idea of sort of sitting, working at home, thinking I'm just sort of doing my email, and now if we were together doing a collaboration of this kind in this meeting, it would feel very real. We would be able to see kind of what you're saying real time, and if we were going to be collaborating on a document together, that would be very possible. That said, I am a big fan of face-to-face, and I think once you have had even some face-to-face with an individual, then the technology kind of augments that to build on that, you know. So I think there's just a combination, but the fact that you have the ability to be able to globally connect with people that you would have, 20 years ago, you would just been on a telephone to them and you wouldn't have ever been able to see their face or how they collaborate or how they work. So I think in the main, you get the mix right, it's a very positive thing, but I take the sentiment of the question.
Is the knowledge worker today more productive than he or she was 10 years ago? Is that inarguable to all three of you?
Absolutely.
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 But I think there's also this kind of changing desire for people's interaction with the workplace, and this whole concept of people wanting to bring their real selves or their whole selves to work, that work is becoming more social and less kind of serious and must be business all the time. And I think that idea, that kind of concept that play is not antithetical to work is important, and people's relationship with their coworkers and their relationship to the workplace is becoming more social as well. So I think that while people might be separated by distance, they have a much closer relationship to the people that they work with than they would have a couple of decades ago. So I think those two forces are happening at the same time. Chris, would you agree we're more productive today than we were 10 years ago?
So how do you measure productivity? I think technology has two effects. It's efficiency. So can you do the same thing but more efficiently? Or its effectiveness. Can you do different things that you couldn't have otherwise done before? And I think you need to keep the two quite separate, but collectively, clearly they're having a big impact on the way people live and work. I mean, what we find in our building is quite interesting. In the past, your business provided you with the technology. Now people bring their own technology to work, and that's a big change, because they are saying, I'm more productive with my iPad. You've got your iPad on your lap. It's your technology. You're using your own technology. How come I use my technology in someone else's building? At the moment, we provide all the Wi-Fi in our buildings. When we started, we thought everyone would just want one device connected to the Wi-Fi. Now it's 4. Okay, so the demand per individual in our buildings is to have the ability to connect simultaneously 4 devices to the Wi-Fi. So that's telling you something about the role of technology and productivity.
Well, we're out of time, but I just have to give props to this audience question, which will leave as a rhetorical one. Will you accept your staff wear casual clothes like Cal while working? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I think, yeah, sure. Thank you all.
Okay.